My name is Teresa Myers. I'm 33 years old, and the moment I stood up at that family dinner table with a calm, steady smile, every single person in the room sensed that nothing in our lives would ever be the same. My husband Grant had just announced, with the confidence of a man who expected applause, that his mother Vivian was moving into my house permanently. The house my parents had spent 20 years of disciplined sacrifice to buy outright, no mortgage, no compromises. The house that still carried only my maiden name on the deed. He'd already given her keys, claimed a bedroom for her, and secretly funneled $23,000 of our joint money through a company that existed only on paper. He looked at me like I'd finally see reason. Instead, what happened in the next 45 minutes cost him our marriage, cost his mother her fantasy of entitlement, cost his sister her endless free access, and left all of them facing the hard truth that some boundaries cannot be charmed their way past to understand how we arrived at that shattering evening. We need to go back 6 months. Welcome to Calm Drama Stories, the place where we unpack the quiet wars fought inside families, the moments when love collides with entitlement, and the clarity that comes when you finally choose yourself. If you've ever watched someone slowly erode your peace while calling it family, or felt guilty for protecting what you've earned, stay with me. Stories like this remind us that real strength isn't endless accommodation. It's knowing when to draw the line. If this hits close to home, leave a comment below and consider subscribing so we can keep sharing these journeys together. I work as a nurse practitioner at Carilion Roanoke Memorial Hospital in Virginia. 3 intense 12-hour night shifts each week. There's something deeply fulfilling about being the calm voice in someone else's chaos, guiding families through their darkest hours in the ICU, but that schedule left little room for anything else. So I became the default manager of our entire home life too. Bills paid on time, groceries stocked, meals prepped for the week, oil changes scheduled, dentist appointments remembered. I told myself this was simply what capable women did. I had made peace with carrying the mental load because if I didn't handle it, it wouldn't get handled. Grant worked as a regional sales manager for a building materials company. Solid income, decent hours, and a magnetic charm that opened doors everywhere he went. He could enter a room of strangers and leave with new friends and lunch invitations. We married when I was 28 and he was 30. Our first year felt like the reward for choosing well. Quiet evenings, easy laughter, the kind of beginning that lets you believe the foundation is solid. Then came the house, the true gift at the center of everything. A modest 3-bedroom with 1.5 baths in a peaceful subdivision just south of Roanoke. There was a maple tree in the front yard that turned brilliant red each fall, and a back patio where I'd sit with coffee at 6 in the morning, watching the neighborhood wake up. At 28, it felt like more than I deserved. My parents, Warren and June, made it possible. Dad had been a plumber for 35 years. Not running some fleet of vans, but crawling under houses at dawn with a flashlight and wrench. Coming home smelling of copper and glue, eating dinner, then heading out again for late-night emergency calls. He drove the same truck for 14 years. Mom worked the register at Kroger for 22 years. They weren't rich. They were deliberate. Every extra dollar disappeared into a savings account they protected like it was sacred. When I told them Grant had proposed, Dad's first question wasn't about romance. It was practical and pointed. How's his credit? That was Dad. 2 weeks before our wedding, they sat me down in their kitchen. He slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside was the deed to the Roanoke house. Paid in full in cash, recorded solely in my maiden name. Teresa June Howren, alongside a notarized gift letter that read, "This property is gifted solely to Teresa June Howren as her sole and separate property." Mom was already in tears. Dad looked at me with the gravity of a man who had fixed too many broken things for other people. This is yours, Ree, not his. Not theirs, yours. Keep the paperwork somewhere safe. I hugged them both, filed the documents in a fireproof lockbox in my closet, and honestly believed Dad was simply being his old-school, overly cautious self. I didn't recognize it as prophecy. Grant was easy to love in the beginning. He noticed small things, my exact coffee order, the song I played on repeat during nursing school exams, my visceral hatred of cilantro. He sent flowers to the hospital on my birthday and called my parents mom and dad within months of dating. People used the word charming like it was his defining trait, and it fit. But charm built on performance rather than principle has an expiration date. By year 2, the patterns were impossible to ignore. Every time Vivian called, Grant dropped whatever we were doing. Conversations halted. Dinners were interrupted. Major decisions ran through her first. New couch. He'd ask her opinion. Vacation timing. Mom wanted us that week. When I carefully brought it up, he stared at me like I'd questioned his religion. She's my Mother Teresa. That summer, her weekend visits became routine without ever asking me. She'd arrive Friday and stay until Sunday. At first, I tried to be gracious. She helped with dishes and brought banana bread. By the 3rd consecutive weekend, I realized Grant had never once checked with me. He simply announced, "Mom's coming Friday." I told him this was my house and I'd appreciate a heads up before inviting overnight guests. His response was always the same refrain, "She's my mother. She doesn't need an invitation." Quiet followed. I would learn that quiet Grant was far more dangerous than angry Grant. He didn't argue in the moment. He simply found another path around me. Vivian was 63, retired from 20 years as a dental receptionist, and she carried the wound of her divorce like a shield. 23 years earlier, her husband Raymond had walked out, leaving her with 12-year-old Grant, 5-year-old Courtney, and a house she couldn't keep. The settlement was brutal. She walked away with 2 suitcases in custody. She told the story at every Thanksgiving, every holiday, her origin myth of loss and survival. It explained her hunger for security. It did not excuse her belief that my security should become hers. The intrusions escalated gradually but relentlessly. She began commenting on the house as if she held veto power. "This kitchen needs new cabinets. That wall color is too dark." Then she stopped asking permission entirely. I returned from a night shift to find new cream lace curtains in the living room where my mother and I had hung navy linen together. "I bought them myself," Vivian said brightly. "Consider it a gift?" Grant shrugged it off. "Mom just wanted to help. Relax." One quiet Saturday in the kitchen, she delivered the line that should have been my warning shot across the bow. "You married into this family. The house came with you." I set down my dish towel and corrected her. The house was a deliberate gift from parents who had earned every dollar. She simply smiled, dried her hands, and walked away. She wasn't arguing. She was stating what she believed to be fact. And beliefs are much harder to fight than opinions. Courtney, Grant's 28-year-old sister, was the human embodiment of entitlement without apology. She worked part-time at a salon and lived with Vivian in a small apartment nearby. She didn't knock. She appeared. Visits stretched into hours. My refrigerator emptied. Wet towels appeared on bathroom floors. She'd flip through my mail, try on my jackets, and leave them wherever they fell. One afternoon, I came home to find her in my small home office with her feet on my desk, scrolling on her phone. Grant said I could use any room. I called him immediately. The pause on the line told me everything. "It's our house, Teresa. Stop acting like it's just yours." That evening, I installed a keyed lock on the office door myself, paid for it myself, and kept both keys hidden. Grant noticed. "You're turning this house into a fortress." I looked at him and said simply, "Then stop letting people walk through it without asking." 3 weeks later, after a brutal 24-hour double shift involving 2 codes and 1 devastated family in the ICU, I came home desperate for silence and a shower. The guest room door stood open. Inside was a completely different space. New floral duvet, reading lamp, framed photo of Grant and Vivian on the dresser, her clothes already hanging in the closet. Grant was eating cereal in the kitchen. Mom's been staying more, so I made it comfortable for her. What's the big deal? The big deal was that he had redecorated a room in my house without a single conversation. The deed was in my name alone. I told him clearly that any changes required my approval. His face flushed. "You sound like a landlord, not a wife." I replied evenly, "And you sound like a man who forgot whose name is on the title." 4 days after that, I opened the mailbox to find a receipt from the locksmith. 3 new house keys charged to Grant's card. He'd already given one to his mother. I changed every exterior lock that same afternoon. When Vivian arrived and her key failed, she called Grant in confusion. I told him if she wanted to visit, she could knock like any other guest. The ground was shifting. Grant wasn't the type to accept defeat. He found another way in. He came home one evening with a smart lock box. Yale brand. We could control it from our phones. No more fighting over physical keys. On the surface, it seemed reasonable, and that was what made Grant's moves so insidious. His worst ideas always arrived wearing the mask of compromise. I agreed on one condition. I would be primary administrator. He installed it. I verified the app showed only 2 users. What I didn't realize was that admins could add new users silently without alerts or notifications to the other admin. While I picked up extra shifts to cover for a nurse on maternity leave, running on fumes and caffeine, Grant added Courtney. I discovered it the hard way when I came home to find her asleep on my couch. My laptop moved from the office, the refrigerator raided. The app log showed her entry at 2:13 p.m. When I demanded answers, Grant admitted it casually. "She's family. You're overreacting." I removed her access on the spot and stripped his administrative privileges. Making myself the sole authority, the financial betrayal surfaced next. Our joint account balance was dropping faster than my paychecks could explain. His automatic transfers for shared bills had simply stopped 3 months earlier. When I confronted him with statements, he claimed he'd been helping his mother. A few hundred here and there, but the numbers didn't lie. I found recurring charges to Myers Home Solutions LLC, an entity Grant had registered with the state. No website, no employees, no legitimate clients. The invoices were for roof repairs, floor refinishing, plumbing upgrades. None of that work had ever been performed. My father had fixed the plumbing himself on a Sunday afternoon for free. Every dollar had been electronically transferred to a savings account in Vivian's name at a different credit union. $23,400 total. I photographed the LLC documents, the hidden checkbook, and the bank statement from the locked drawer in the guest room. Then I put everything back exactly as I'd found it. I didn't explode. I didn't confront. Instead, I met with a sharp family law attorney named Ellen Park and a forensic accountant named Sandra Okafor. The evidence was airtight. The house was my separate property, protected by the pre-marriage deed and notarized gift letter. The LLC represented clear dissipation of marital assets. For 3 long weeks, I maintained the performance of a content wife while the folder of proof grew heavier in my bag. I cooked his favorite meals. I asked about his sales quotas. I smiled while counting down the days until I would reveal everything in front of witnesses at the very dinner where he planned to announce his mother's permanent move-in. It was the hardest acting I've ever done, sitting across from a man who believed he'd won, knowing I held the evidence that would end the illusion. That Saturday night, both families gathered. Vivian brought her cherished china from the house she'd lost decades ago. Courtney arrived with overnight bags as if she already belonged. My parents brought the original deed and gift letter. Grant stood at the head of the table, hand on his mother's shoulder, and made his proud announcement. His mother was moving in. The study would become her sitting room. Courtney was welcome any time. He'd already ordered new keys. He turned to me with that salesman smile. "Right, babe?" Every eye in the room turned to me. I stood slowly, reached for the thick manila folder, and began to speak with the same steady voice I use when families are falling apart in the ICU. The contrast between the charming man I'd married and the stranger who had stolen from me. Between Vivian's past pain and her present entitlement. Between my parents' lifetime of honest work and this calculated betrayal was about to become impossible to ignore. I looked directly at Grant first, my voice steady like I was delivering difficult news to a patient's family in the ICU. "Grant, before we talk about your mother moving in, let's be very clear about whose house this actually is." I lifted the original deed from the folder, holding it so everyone could see. This document, recorded with the Roanoke City Circuit Court, lists only one owner, Teresa June Howren, my maiden name. Not Teresa Myers. Not a joint asset. Mine alone. My parents paid cash as a pre-wedding gift. No mortgage. No shared title. Just me. Dad nodded once from across the table. His quiet confirmation carrying the weight of 35 years fixing other people's broken homes. The contrast landed like a quiet hammer. My father's honest labor under houses at dawn versus the phantom contractor work Grant had invented on paper. I transitioned smoothly, keeping my tone even. But the house isn't even the most painful truth at this table tonight. I pulled out Sandra's 14-page forensic report, tabs marking every bank statement and LLC filing. For the past 8 months, Grant created a fake company called Myers Home Solutions LLC. No employees, no office, no real clients, no website. He ran 11 invoices through our joint checking account for renovations here, roof repairs that never happened. I glanced upward at the unchanged ceiling. Hardwood refinishing that left the same scuffs I've seen for years. Plumbing upgrades my dad actually performed himself one Sunday afternoon for free. The room had gone completely still. Vivian's hands pressed flat against the table as if the world was tilting. I laid out the numbers without emotion. $23,400 total. Every withdrawal from our joint account transferred electronically into a savings account at Cardinal Community Credit Union. I looked straight at her. "And your name, Vivian?" Grant's salesman charm dissolved instantly into red-faced panic. "You went through my desk? Hired people to spy on your own husband?" The man who once remembered my coffee order and sent hospital flowers was now the stranger who had quietly stolen from me while calling it family support. That contrast between the husband I thought I married and the one standing there, exposed, felt sharper than any argument we'd ever had. I didn't flinch or raise my voice. I reviewed statements I have every right to see as a co-owner of that account. When I found the pattern of missing transfers and suspicious LLC charges, I did what any responsible person would. I gathered proof instead of accusations. My attorney and forensic accountant confirmed this is clear dissipation of marital assets. Courts see this every day. Courtney's eyes widened. "They'll see. Grant, is that why you asked me to sign those papers last month and said it was for your job?" She stood up, grabbed her purse, and walked out without another word, leaving the front door open so the cool October air rushed in. Even as sister drew her own line once the deception was laid bare, I turned to Vivian with deliberate care, creating the story's most important emotional contrast. Vivian, I know what happened 23 years ago. I know Raymond left you with 2 small children and almost nothing. I know young Grant carried his pillow to the car and asked if you were ever going home again. I'm genuinely sorry you faced that loss without support. For a moment, I saw the mother in the faded photograph standing in front of the solemn house she painted herself. Her eyes glistened. The armor of her old womb cracked just slightly, but I continued with the boundaries she had never been told. That pain, as real as it was, does not give you the right to take what my family built. My parents saved for 20 years. Dad crawled under strangers' houses with a flashlight for decades. Mom stood at a register through 22 years of holidays and long shifts. They gave me this house as my foundation, not as something to be divided or claimed by guilt. Your history doesn't cancel their sacrifice or my right to say no. Vivian's face crumpled, then hardened. She slammed both palms on the table, rattling the dishes. You have no idea what it's like to lose everything. Grant exploded right after, shouting that I was tearing the family apart over paperwork and money, his voice cracking as the charming facade completely shattered. In one sudden motion, he grabbed his wine glass and hurled it at the wall behind me. It missed by a foot and exploded, sending red wine streaking down the white paint like the last illusions of our marriage finally bleeding out. I didn't flinch. I have faced worse storms at work. It's over, Grant. I'm filing for divorce Monday morning. My lawyer will submit the motion to protect this house as my separate property and the full forensic report on the fraud. The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. Vivian stood on shaking legs, trying to gather her cherished china from her lost Salem house. Her hands trembled so badly that the top plate slipped, hitting the tile with a sharp crack that seemed to echo everything breaking that night. She stared at the shattered porcelain, then at me. You'll regret this. I met her eyes calmly. No, Vivian, I won't. A home isn't something you simply deserve because life was once unfair to you. It's something you respect enough to earn and protect. They left broken. Grant followed his mother out to the car where Courtney waited with the engine running. The door closed and the house felt quiet except for the refrigerator hum. 10 seconds passed before Mom's gentle voice asked, "Ree, are you okay?" The adrenaline that had kept me steady began to fade. My hands started trembling, but I told her the real tears had already come alone in the hospital parking garage, 3 weeks earlier when I first held that bank statement. This night had been for truth, not more crying out Dad, 61 with bad knees, knelt without a word and began picking up every piece of the broken china. Mom joined him. They cleaned the spilled wine together the same way they had faced life for 40 years. As a true team built on mutual respect instead of manipulation or entitlement. We sat at the half-empty table afterward and ate Mom's pecan pie while the wine stain dried on the wall. The maple tree outside stood still in the night. The house already felt lighter, as if truth had opened every window. Monday at 8:30. I filed the petition in motion with Ellen Park. The house was ruled my sole separate property immediately. The judge accepted Sandra's report. Grant was ordered to repay the full $23,400 from his share of assets. Vivian returned $15,000 of what she'd received. The divorce was granted 9 months later. I kept everything that mattered, the house, my career, the life I had earned. In the weeks that followed, I reclaimed every space. I stripped the floral bedding Vivian had chosen and donated it. Fresh white sheets went on the bed. The cream lace curtains came down. The navy linen ones my mother and I once selected with joy went back up. I reset the smart lock so only I had access. Then I planted marigolds along the front walk on my father's advice, bright, strong flowers that keep pests away and bring smiles. I took a photo of the house with its new flowers, my car in the driveway, and no one else's name on anything. I texted it to Dad with the words, "I kept it." His reply was simple, a thumbs up and good. What I learned is powerful in its simplicity. The contrast between entitlement and integrity had defined everything. Grant's early charm had hidden a man willing to lie and still to please his mother. Vivian's old trauma had twisted into the belief that another woman's security should repair her own past. But real strength isn't endless accommodation or guilt. It's the paperwork my father insisted on, the calm voice when everyone else is shouting, and the willingness to stand alone at the table and speak truth. A home is the boundary you draw around the life you've built. No charm, no sob story, no family pressure gets to erase it. My parents didn't just hand me keys. They showed me how to protect what's mine. If you're watching this and you felt your peace slowly disappearing under the weight of an entitled partner or in-law, if you've carried every responsibility while someone else spent what you earned, or if you've wondered whether protecting yourself makes you the villain, let Teresa's story be your turning point. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to keep what is yours. Check the deed. Keep records. Draw the line before the line is crossed beyond repair. If this resonated, drop a comment. Have you ever had to fight for your own home or boundaries against family? What would you have done at that dinner table? Share this video with any woman who needs permission to stand up. Subscribe for more real stories about family, respect, and the quiet strength it takes to choose yourself. Thank you for being here with me. I'll see you in the next calm drama stories where we remember that some houses are worth defending.